policies and passionate stakeholders, we are paving the way for extraordinary growth that will leave an indelible mark on the global stage. Today's session is all about innovation and empowerment. We have come together to dwell deep into the highlights of the recently announced Electronic Component Manufacturing Scheme, ECMS, a transformative initiative by the government. This scheme is more than just a policy. It's a game changer for the entire ecosystem, and we are thrilled to have the architects of this vision here with us today. I'm delighted to welcome our incredible knowledge partners, Dhruva Advisors, and EY India team. Thank you so much for joining, who will guide us through the intricacies of this scheme. But the real magic lies in the presence of our industry icon, the mastermind behind this initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have with us Shri Vinod Sharma ji, past chairman of ESC and chairman electronics. And as we all know, he don't need any introduction. He wears our different hats. Ms. Vinod ji is a true trailblazer whose unwavering dedication to small businesses and the larger industry ecosystem has fueled this vision. His passion for progress and his relentless efforts have inspired us all. And despite his busy schedule, he joins us live from Chennai airport. Right now, he was traveling in Chennai and he joins us on a special request. Sir, very thankful to you. Your humility and enthusiasm embody the spirit of the industry, and we are deeply honored by your presence today. Thank you so much for your time. Let me also take a moment to thank our partner associations for their unwavering support in this mission. We have been joined by almost 8 industry associations, including some of the mainline industry associations like Alcina, BATE, LCA, and other associations who have joined us and supported this mission. You are the pillars of our industry's success, and together we are scripting a phenomenal story of growth and innovation. Without further delay, I know it's time to kick things off. I now invite our chairman, Mr. V. Sagar, to share his welcome address and set the tone for what promises to be a truly insightful and enriching session. Here's to learning, collaboration, and the unstoppable spirit of progress. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. V. Sagar.
You can hear me now? Thank you very much, Gurmeet, for
Sir,
organizing
can you be a little
this.
louder?
Thank you very much, Gurmeet, for organizing this seminar. I'd also like to thank first Vinod Sharma.
Sir, you are not audible.
No? Why is that?
Can you be a little louder?
Gurmeet, yes, it is all right. We can hear.
Okay. Hello. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Sir. Yeah. I personally like to thank Vinod Sharma and Sandeep for organizing this, apart from Gurmeet, and giving the opportunity for all our members to understand what's happening in this world with this new business of tariffs, of changes, etc. My personal view, though, of course, in tariffs is that it's all going to become okay. It's a big facade for negotiations, and things will settle down without adding too much trouble. So with that, I said, distinguished friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon for all of you. I extend a warm welcome to you on our behalf of the Electronics and Computer Software Export Promotion Council. Today, we gathered not just for a session, but for a revolution of opportunities, strategies, and a future that is waiting to be engineered. India is no longer the back office of the world. We are not just writing code, we are writing history. We are being consumers of technology. We are now determined to become the creators and curators. And nowhere is this more urgent or more promising than the world of electronics and component manufacture. The Indian electronic industry is at a turning point, all in terms of technology-wise, in terms of user-wise, and in terms of globalization under a threat. And this is where electronic computer manufacturing scheme enters not as a policy, but as a game changer. Think of electronic components manufacturing scheme as a launch pad, not just for your business, but for India's electronic renaissance. Let us try and become the brand that will someday replace made in Taiwan or made in assembly with engineered in good. Because technology is now an enabling tool. So let's look out of the box, think beyond technology, the use of technology to the use in various verticals: auto, agriculture, town planning, medical, education and training, and telecom. And now with issues of duties and tariffs, use our strength so that we become better and dominate, take advantage. So this is a moment to dream differently. Today's session will dive into the strategic core of ECMS. We have with us technocrats and industry leaders who will break it all down for you. But more importantly, I urge you to listen, not just for what ECMS is, but what it can become when powered by your vision. India's potential is not just in software growth, but in electronic sovereignty. It's about having the ability to build our own sensors, boards, silicon with world-class quality and scale. We have the ability to create solutions, answers, solutions, and create designs and include all kinds of things in our offerings. We have done it in space, we have done it in payments, and now we will do it in electronics. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a future where a microchip made in Pune powers a device in Paris, or where an LOT sensor designed in Coimbatore regulates smart homes in California, where made in India isn't a slogan, it's a standard of excellence. The moment people see India, they say, oh, this is quality, this is good stuff, this is what we look for. So, ladies and gentlemen, the road ahead is not easy, but the direction is clear and the engine has been started. All we need is to drive. So let this session be the ignition spark. Let ECMS be your map. Welcome to the future. Welcome to India's electronic revolution. Thank you.
For your welcome address. Now, may I request our star of today's session, Vinod Sharma ji, to please unmute himself and take over. Thank you so much, sir. And thanks again for joining. I know you are traveling and you are always kind to our request. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gurmeet. I hope I'm audible and clear. Great. So first of all, thank you very much for putting me on the spot.
You're always clear. You're always clear.
Thank you, Mr. Sagar. Gurmeet, ESC, Mr. Veer Sagar, my colleague Sandeep, who's leading ESC along with Mr. Veer Sagar so well. Thank you very much for having me and for organizing this, as you said, a very seminal webinar on an important turning point in the history, as we will recall, of the electronics manufacturing in India and hopefully globally. It is so. Thank you for those kind words, Gurmeet. And I'll dive straight in. I wanted to make just 3 quick points. I realize that in the audience today we have people who are, of course, who have spent a lifetime in electronics, but we also have a lot of potential new investors, companies and professionals who would like to look at this sector as a sector of the future, which it is. So let me begin first by giving a little context on electronics itself, right? I mean, we all realize, and often we made this huge mistake of thinking of electronics as another vertical, as a sector. We've always described it at Alcina, at ESC, at CII as a meta resource. It's an enabler, it's a driver of many other sectors. So whether it's agriculture today, it's healthcare, it's machine automation, it's industry 4.0, it's civil aviation, it's defense, you name it, and electronics plays an extremely important role. And hence my first point is that if you get into electronics in any form, you are actually beginning to drive and enable a whole lot of economics in the shape of different products, different services. How large is this? And so if you look at that entire global electronics figure today, you will get two different figures, $1.8 billion, and a lot of people talk about $2.4 billion. Depends on whether you count the components in or not. So let's choose 2.4 for a moment. And you will see that $2.4 billion, when you divide that by the population, sorry, 2.4 trillion, when you divide that, and 2.1 at the moment is the correct figure, 2.1 trillion by 7 billion, you're looking at a $300 plus per capita consumption of electronics around the world. If you look at India as a consumer economy, we are just about scratching the surface. We are now reaching somewhere about $75. Which is a great. We've come a long way from $30 per capita that we were there just about 7 years ago. So $75 has been growth, but then if you want to even catch up with the world today, the world average is $300. So you have a 4x growth opportunity available within domestic electronic market itself. We also know that every country that actually embraced electronic manufacturing as one of their key pillars, and I would name Japan here, starting with Japan and then much later South Korea, Taiwan, now we see mainland China, we see this is going to Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, the list is on. So largely a lot of the Asian ASEAN countries, you will find that in the 2 or 3 decades that they begin to put emphasis on electronics manufacturing, their GDPs actually began to multiply by anywhere between 2.5 to 4.5x within a period of 2 decades. And so we hope that this kind of fortuitous, coincidence will also help India to reach that goal that all of us and our honorable Prime Minister has been setting for us, and not only being the third largest economy, but moving on to becoming a Viksit Bharat by 2047. And hence, I hope you're all now convinced that electronics manufacturing together is one of the pivotal ways in which we will be able to reach some of those national goals that we have for ourselves. Having said that, the question is, so why didn't we do it so far? Or why were we struggling with this? And this boils down to, many of you are aware, ITA 1 WTO agreement was signed in 1998. In 2005, 217 tariff lines went to zero duty. Now, we do not have a history of being globally competitive in any manufacturing sector, including auto, if the duties are reduced to zero, right? And hence, this was a very important piece where we began to challenge ourselves. The government gave us this huge challenge. We struggled. Some of us survived. Some of us thrived, as we see in the last few years in the EMS sector. And we were able to get to this point of beginning to get counted. And you will see that just the scratching on the surface with the PLI on mobile phones and components, a little later with electronic hardware, and now AC and LEDs, and a few other PLIs, we are beginning to already become the largest commodity for exports out of India, cell phones leading the charge. But I've always told my colleagues that we need to look at the whole electronics race as a 4 into 400 meter relay. And the first leg of that 400 meter relay, which is beginning to look good and is encouraging all of us, thanks to a lot of positive policies by the government of India, especially our own ministry, MeitY. They began to understand what our issues were, how difficult it is to compete at zero duty, and along with several other initiatives, which I won't sort of get into today, but whether it's a Gati Shakti, whether it's a ease of doing business, it's a national single window system, a portal for easing your entry into this country, all that put together augurs very well for what the future holds. But only the first leg has been that of assembly. So we've so far become reasonably okay at assembly. Some of our EMS companies, 4-5 of them have done wonders. The charge being led by Dixon, there's Keynes, there's SGS Sirma, there are several others, Mapino, many companies that are doing extremely well in this area. And the capital markets are already applauding that, and you know that through their market caps. The second leg of this race, but however, this is done on a 5%, average 5% PLI. The worry and the concern is what happens when this PLI goes to a sunset. Will it erode this fantastic, beautiful forest of woods that we have created for electronic assembly? No, it won't, in case only if we are able to grow the roots, and the roots are the components. And that is the second leg of the relay race, which is what the electronic component manufacturing scheme has very rightly addressed. What this means is that even in a zero duty environment, even though we are going to add more value than assembly, And we all know that the impact of disabilities that we have in any country, but definitely in India, that impact of disabilities on our competitiveness is directly proportional to the amount of value we add. In assembly, the value add is less. In components, it's more. It's a capital intensive business. It's an employment intensive business. It's a technology intensive business. So when you get into such a business and you try to add values upwards of 30 to 40%, obviously these disabilities come to bite, and that's the reason why we haven't done so well as we should have in the component manufacturing space. This policy, which you will hear a lot from our colleagues in Global Advisors and ENY now, addresses those. Does it address it fully? I think I'll leave that for another day. But it's a fantastic, positive policy that has come about, a turning point as I described it. What are the other two legs of the relay? And I'll quickly cover that. The third one, which you cannot actually have just components and assembly if we don't begin to design for ourselves. What should be elements of this design, whether it's software, firmware, product design, exist in India. There is the talent that we require. We are doing it for the world. I think we need to do it for some products made in India. There is another policy that we have worked on under the chairmanship of the Principal Scientific Advisor, Dr. Ajay Suri, and Dr. Ajay Chaudhary, and the Secretary Meti, which will hopefully also see light of the day. Another $8 billion, hopefully, in that policy will help us to productionize design for India and for the world. And the last leg, I would say, we can truly say we've hit the home run and we've come victorious out of this whole thing, is when some Indian companies, at least a handful of them, will be recognized as brands across the world. Our own Samsungs and our own Apples and our own Panasonics will be born out of India. And I hope some of them are today in the audience, not only at the finished goods level, but at the component, at the design and the module level. Last bit about what are these components that we're talking about, and we coined a phrase some time ago. So this is the non-semiconductor part of the electronic component business. A very easy figure to remember for you would be about 60% of the $2.4 trillion I told you is actually electronic BOM. Out of that, about 60% of that is semiconductors and 40% of that is non-semiconductor. It's still a very substantial number. Even for India, that requirement today is $120 billion. And we are scratching the surface just at about $12 billion. So 90% of that we are still importing. Most of it you can guess is from which country. Time has come that we begin to unravel this whole thing. These are the PEPCAMs, as we call them. So P for PCBs, E for electromechanicals, P for passives, capacitor, resistor, inductors, C for connectors, A for actives like diodes, for example, relays, etc. Sorry, not relays. M for magnetics, and also M for modules, and finally S for sensors. And you'll be surprised that in each one of these, we are doing at least a few $1 billion of imports today. That needs to be replaced by components manufactured in India, whether you do it as joint ventures with friends abroad, you do it through a technology transfer, or you do it through homegrown technology. I think that entire field is open to us. So with that, I will stop here and hand it over back to you, Gurmeet, and to our experts today on details of the scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your insights. And again, thank you so much for joining us. May request our knowledge partners for today's session, Mr. Dhruv Partners, to please take the stage. Mr. Kulraj Ashpani.
Audible?
Kulraji, we are not able to hear you.
Is it better now? Am I audible now?
You need to, I think you need to change the speaker, or because your voice is coming very low.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I won't really agree more with Mr. Vinod Sharma about the importance of this scheme, and without wasting much of the time, I would just like a couple of words that I liked a lot, where he said that we have now a home run, and therefore we certainly, the committee has actually hit a home run by this scheme. The scheme is in fact a complete incentive scheme in itself. We have seen schemes in the past, either be it MSIPs or be it SPICs. PLI for large manufacturing came in 2020, and we got some cluster-specific schemes announced by the central government. But what in my due consideration, there has been none other than this ECMS that we will be talking about in the next 15 minutes or so. I think it changes the dynamics how we can do and how India can progress on component manufacturing over the period of next 5-6 years or so, and it will continue for a long. So without getting into it, let me kind of show the presentation about what this scheme all about. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes,
it is
please.
visible.
Perfect. So the first slide generally it is contained that was there actually need of getting into the scheme and what was the enabling content to it. So if you see the chart just in the screen, while over the last 3-4 years, the domestic manufacturing of electronic goods has really gone across from 5 million from 5 lakh crore rupees to 9.5 lakh crore rupees. But the domestic manufacturing has not got so, and probably has flattened the curve between a lakh of crore rupees or so. In the same pace, import has been steadily growing over, and therefore there is a need to curb and need to replace the import by way of domestic manufacturing. And while there have been schemes in the past, but there was still a need to bridge up that gap, and therefore this gap, the government intent is to bridge up the gap with this scheme, which is ECMS. If you talk about the scheme per se, the scheme actually flows the vision of Honorable Prime Minister, which is Atmanirbhar Bharat, and this is specifically in the electronic supply chain system. The scheme focuses on domestic value addition. The scheme mainly focuses on investment and employment as criteria to pass over the incentives to the manufacturing and applicants. The scheme precisely is providing benefits into certain target segments. The target segments are split between 3 parts. One is sub-assemblies, second are bare components and selected bare components, and third one is very important, which is supply chain ecosystem and capital equipment. It is the parts to manufacture sub-assemblies and bare component and selected bare components. What is most important is scheme provides for incentive to manufacture capital equipment for sub-assemblies and bare components as well, which is a very unique proposition in itself. So when I said that scheme is complete, because scheme targets the components as well as the backward integration into the subcomponents or child parts to it, as well as the capital goods used for manufacturing these components. The incentive, and this is very unlike any other scheme of incentive that has been so in the past, the incentive flows into 3 different baskets. There are turnover linked incentives to certain target segment. There is a capex linked incentive to a target segment, and there is a hybrid incentive, which is a mix of turnover linked incentive and a capital linked incentive. To be eligible to participate in the scheme, the eligibility could be a greenfield and brownfield project both. There has to be a minimum investment commitment to be made by the applicant. To apply, the government will open the application window, and the eligibility will be based upon the global manufacturing, which is technically we said ESDM revenue. There will be technical and financial capabilities of the applicant, so be measured to determine the eligibility under the scheme or not. The scheme has a tenure of 6 years of incentive, which for a turnover link is 6 years, with the base year starting from 24-25. What is base year, and we'll discuss in subsequent slide. And the base year will have a 1-year gestation period along with it. Then you have a capital link incentive, which is again for a period of 5 years, but the incentive flows a period of 6 years. We discussed the target segment, but when we say the target segment, it broadly flows down to 4 different segments, which is sub-assemblies, which cover display module sub-assembly, camera module sub-assembly. Target segment 2, which is B, which we denote, is bare components. Bare components, we have subcategorization as non-surface mounted device, which is non-SMT passive components, electron mechanical for electronic applications, multi-layer PCBs, Leon cells for digital applications, enclosures for mobile IT hardware products and related devices. Then you have a category of selected bare components, which is high density interconnect, which is HDI, modified semi-additive processes, flexible PCBs, and SMD passive components. Then, as I mentioned, that the last category is passive supply chain components in the ecosystem, which is parts and components used for manufacturing of subcomponents and bare components, and capital goods used in electronic manufacturing. To be eligible to get benefit under the scheme, we mentioned that there has to be a revenue fulfillment, which is your global ESD, and the technical and financial capabilities shall be rolled out, which will be in the detailed guidelines that is yet to be issued by the ministry. We mentioned that nature shall be both greenfield and brownfield, so therefore it could be a new setup or it could be an expansion in the existing setup. Any applicant would need to make specified investment. That's a very important criteria to get a benefit, and investments need to be made for a period of 5 years. The investments shall so be counted from the date the notification of the scheme has got notified, which is April of 8th. So therefore, any investments made from April or 8th shall so be counted for the investment purposes for getting you eligibility under the scheme. The incentive, as we mentioned, is based upon 3 very important criteria. It is to have a minimum cumulative investment, having a minimum incremental sale, and minimum cumulative employment generation. So the scheme focuses on 3 very important criteria. What is the investment that you commit and you make? What is the incremental sales you commit and achieve? And the employment that you commit and achieve in terms of incremental. Claim application, the scheme, so the scheme will be governed by a body which is yet to be notified, which is called a PMA, which is Project Management Authority. The claims shall be made quarterly in terms of the guidelines, and the commencement of production is a very important factor for getting the claim under the capital investment targeted segments. Application timelines for the scheme for the 3 segments that we discussed, which is sub-assembly, bare components, and selected bare components. The application window starts from 1st of May, which will remain live for a period of 3 months. Given the current scenario in terms of the guidelines have not been issued, we expect this to be extended. For the 4th and interesting subsegment, which is supply chain ecosystem and capital equipment, the application can be filed for a 2 years period from 1st of May 2025, and the government will see how the application window happens in both the target segment, and if necessary, the extension or subsequent application window shall so be opened. So given the background now, let's talk about how the incentive flows. So when we talk about turnover linked incentive, it is an incentive on the basis of incremental turnover which an applicant attains. And it has a range of 1 to 10%, 10% being the highest, and the scheme is technically a front-loaded scheme. So therefore, the highest incentives is given in the initial years. So technically, it is 10% to 1% of the incentive, which is on the incremental turnover a unit attains. As you mentioned, 24-25 is considered a base year, but you have a leverage of 1 year of gestation. So therefore, base year can be 25-26 on the request of applicants. Or the total incentive, 1% of the incentive under the turnover linked incentive is on the threshold employment that you generate. So if you are not able to generate the requisite employment, then your incentive percentage goes down by 1%. To give an example to this, let's say we talk about the category A, which is sub-assembly. In this, you have targeted segment of display module. In this module, in this targeted segment, a unit is required to commit a total investment of 250 crores, which will be 50 crores each year. So you need to attain a 50 crores of investment in year 1, which could be the year 25-26 as we talk about, which can get extended by 1 year of gestation. And every year, a unit will be required to make an additional 50 crores of investment. Likewise, the incremental threshold of sales, which we mentioned could be the base year of 2024, 24-25 or 25-26 if gestation is obtained, is 200 crores, and that has to be increased every year by another 200 crores for a period of 5 years. And 6th year again we'll be reaching a threshold turnover of 1200 crores. And incremental employment generation should be 50 people, which should go up to 300 in the 6-year span. And the turnover, when we say, is 4% for the first year, which goes back in the year 6 as 1%. So therefore is a front loading of investment. So if I do a 200 crores of incremental sales, I subject to fulfillment of investment of 50 crore and employment of additional 50 people, I'll be given a 4% incentive of 200 crores of incremental turnover. So that's how typically the PLI schemes have been worked out, and this is again in the nature of a PLI scheme only. And if you see, while the front load of incentive is 4% here, but in camera module it is 5%. In non-SMD passive and electronic mechanical component, it is 8% in the first year, and so on and so forth. So therefore, this scheme provides you turnover link incentive on achieving an incremental turnover subject to fulfillment of an incremental investment and an incremental employment generation. Just to repeat myself up, if the employment generation is not attained, then the incentive percentage goes down by 1%. So let's say for multi-layer PCB, just to give another example, the investment criteria is 50 crores, 10 crores in each year for the next 5 years, and incremental sales to the base year shall be 15 crores in the first year to go to 90 crores cumulative, and employment generation to be 15 employees to go cumulative 90 employees over the period of 6 years or so. And in this case, the incentive amount is 10%. So it's the highest incentive in multi-layer PCB in the first year, which goes down to 5 years in the 6-year period. Very importantly, there's an additional incentive of 1% and 2% respectively for multi-layer PCB laminate and for cathode active material for Lion cells. If we are able to manufacture, if a unit is manufacturing this, then besides the incentive percentage, there will be a 1% and 2% of additional incentive that shall so be granted. So this was turnover link incentive scheme. When we talk about capital expenditure incentive, as the name says, it's giving a benefit of the capital investment that a unit so makes. So the incentive is calculated as a percentage of the eligible capital expenditure. What is eligible capital expenditure is something that is not clear, as the guidelines to that respect will so be issued. Under the scheme, the disbursement of incentive will be given only when the commercial production so starts. As we mentioned, the mechanism shall be so bring in place. And again, the incentive percentage will depend upon the capital investment you make and employment a unit generate. If the employment is not generated, then the incentive amount goes down by a 5 percentage points here, then 1 percentage point that was there in the turnover incentive scheme. Just to look into the horizon of it, so the capital expenditure incentive is available in category D segment, which is the ecosystem, supply chain ecosystem and capital equipment. The incentive amount is 25% of the capital that you invest. There's a minimum turnover, there's a minimum investment threshold of 10 crores that a unit is required to commit and make. And in employment threshold of 10% per crore of investment that a unit is required to make and commit. And once you do that, a 25% of incentive shall so be granted. How that 25% shall be granted, whether it will be an equal installment or will that happen year on year, is something that will be more specified in the guideline, but one can assume it to be 25% of investment that you make year on year, and therefore the benefit is so granted. Just to repeat myself up, 5% of the incentive is towards the employment generation. So if the employment threshold is not fulfilled, the capex incentive amount goes from 25% to 20% here. The last segment of it is hybrid incentive. So hybrid is an incentive segment which is covering both, has a turnover linked incentive attached to it and the capex linked incentive attached to it. It is applicable for selected bare components, which is category C. And for conditions to be fulfilled, you need to fulfill the entire set of consideration, as we mentioned, capex, investment, and employment. Just to enumerate here is this was selected bare component. We talk about SMD passive components here. A 250 crore of total investment is that is required to be committed to be made in 50 crores every year. Likewise, there's a incremental sale that needs to be generated every year from 75 crores to a year 6 of 450 crores, and an employment generation from 100 to 600 people in total, and a benefit ranges from 5%, again a front-loaded benefit, to 3% in the 6th year. Along with it, you get a capex incentive of 25%. So you get the best of both worlds if a manufacturer aims to start manufacturing of SMD passive component in this segment. Very importantly, alike to both the schemes, if the turnover threshold is not fulfilled, then you get, if the employment threshold is not fulfilled, then the turnover incentive goes down by 1% and the capex incentive goes down by the 5%. Well, this is broadly the scheme because we don't have the guidelines available, so we will stop short at that stage. But yes, these are the three set of incentives that are available in this very, very important scheme, ECMS. There are certain clarification that will come with the guidelines and that will help a lot. But yes, to just broaden them, what happens if the incentive, what happens to the incentive if threshold is not attained in one particular year? What happens in that situation, and in attained in totality is something that we will await and clarify. But yes, under the earlier PLI scheme, for that very year, the benefit is not granted, but for subsequent years, the benefit is made available. So it's not that if you don't attain in a particular year, you're thrown out of the PLI or thrown out of the ECMS benefit. One very important aspect which has not been covered, which we'll see if the guidelines were provided, what happens when we do captive consumption of these products? If I manufacture a product in itself and I manufacture the components as well in a backward integration stage, or because of the scheme, I do backward integration, then how shall the captive consumption be valued, and how shall that will go in place is something that will be seen in the guidelines to place. Importantly, we don't really have the list of goods and components under the targeted segment. We don't have exhaustive list. They provide an indicative list only. So that probably will happen when the guidelines will come into picture. What we don't really have is what is the limit to an incentive. There can be a threshold. Let's say a 25 crore or 1,000 crores of investment, will that be given or not? Or what will be the maximum threshold is something that we'll have to wait and see. But broadly, this is what the scheme is all about at this stage. While I again repeat myself, the guidelines are awaited, but as and when it comes into picture, we'll have much more clarity how the scheme throws its path off. And at this stage, to just conclude myself, it's a complete resilient scheme to give into picture, given that you are industry giants and players. Look into the scheme from a benefit perspective, alike to PLI, and this is more comprehensive than PLI. It shall throw enormous benefit to all of you. With that, I conclude my presentation and I pass it over to Gurmeet to take forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kulrajji, for the detailed presentation and insights on the ECMS scheme. Now I invite Mr. Vaibhav Anand from the EI team to give the presentation. Vaibhav.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So firstly, I would like to congratulate everyone present here, the industry and the association, that it is a very fortunate time right now to be discussing about this, wherein all the PLI schemes came in, always wanted an ecosystem to be developed on the electronic component side, and now that we have a scheme in place, it is already gaining a lot of traction from a lot of players, and it is a really fortunate time. And to how we see this scheme as that it definitely EMS would act as an enabler, to see the progress of what has already been seen in under other PLIs, with the likes of under PLI Mobile, so to say, how Apple has moved on, the success that Apple has shown. Then definitely under these scheme also, there would be a lot of players that would come out to be winners, and they should definitely be seen as a synergy that it will bring into the entire ecosystem. Basically, all the major contours of the scheme, Kulraj has already covered. So we just wanted to say that, as a next step under the scheme, what would be the qualification criteria that would come out in the guidelines would be critical for all the industry players. That would be important. Then how the selection would be made, that would be very much critical. There could be certain technology parameters that would be seen by the industry, because that technology would be an important role while the selection would be made. And while filing of those applications, once the window for the application start from the 1st May onwards, then entire documentation that will be made along with the forecast and all. There also has to be interesting play of the other incentives that would be available, in addition to ECMS. That would also help a lot of players to prepare their forecasts. So to say that there are other state incentives also that are available. There are other schemes like SEZ or a bonded warehouse scheme where the benefits can be provided. So all those can be coupled up while the forecasts are being prepared, and that will actually help showcase the better forecast for the scheme and to have the better incentives. Yeah. So that are the key points that we wanted to mention are going to be very important once the guidelines are in place from the 26th onwards. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we open up the platform for Q&A session, may I request Vinodji to please share his comments. I know you are about to board, so don't want to miss the chance to hearing you again. Vinodji.
Thank you, Vikas. Thanks very much, Mr. Kulraj and Vaibhavji. Very clear and very important points that you made in the presentation. My only comment to everybody in the audience today would be that I think this is time, and I hope that I know many of us are already in the planning stages of finding either partners abroad. So I would reach out to all stakeholders. So whether it's ENY and Ruva, for example, I'm sure that you have many clients abroad who wanted to come into India. Then there are many Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese players because of the differential duties, tariffs that might eventually be applicable to their exports to America. Can India be an alternative destination where the manufacturing can actually happen in India? So just imagine that there is a Korean player making a component in China, exporting to Europe today, or to US, sorry. What we can offer as Indian players is a chance to say, hey, come along with us in a joint venture, in a technology transfer, in some kind of an alliance where we begin to actually manufacture that component in India as quickly as we can. And not only continue to export for them to the US, but also, of course, start making it for India and giving it to our friends, EMS companies within India and abroad. And I think that would be, and in doing this, the scheme more than pays for this entire transition. As you saw in some of the passive components, for example, the first year is about an 8%. So I think to me, as a player in this business, I find that planning and that speed, the ability to hit the road running, is going to be extremely crucial. And which is why probably MeitY is giving us only a 3-month window to be able to take this call and quickly commit to investments. So while the investments are staggered well in 5 years, but I think that that commitment needs to be made now. The finding of the partners, if required, needs to be done now. And of course, in the brownfield projects where there is expansion or diversification within those component lines, there it's probably slightly easier. So that's what I wanted to say. And like I mentioned in my opening remarks, look at this also holistically. It's not just one scheme. The fact that PLIs have triggered so much assembly in India, the markets are now ready. The demand is already here. The semiconductor scheme is bringing together. So a lot of the semiconductors will either, through a fabulous design, be designed in India and fabricated somewhere, maybe even fabricated in India. And in many cases, at least the ATMP or the OSAT will happen in India, which means that a big part of the component is already being done in India. The product might be designed, and I spoke about the product design scheme, might already be designed in India. And hence, in my personal opinion, the demand that we are going to see shooting up for components that are made within India is going to be very large. Add to this the fact that in many cases, preferential market access (PMA) schemes by the government have been triggered in many areas, and whether it's the railways or the defense or or for example the MNRE schemes where again the solar inverters, for example, should have a lot of local components. We've seen that in if you take the Prime Minister E-Drive scheme for auto. You will again see that very specifically they mentioned that, okay, into this motor drive controller, there are 8 components that are major. At least 2 of those components have to be local. So there are several other schemes that are pushing us in the same direction. I would say, yeah, the stars are lining up for all of us. The ball is in our court now as the private sector. I think entrepreneurial energies need to come to the fore. Again, I remember that most of us and many of the companies that we know of who are members of ESC or LCNA, for example, had started somewhere in late 80s, early 90s. I think that 2.0, that orbit is now beginning to come in. Time for all of us to raise ourselves to that level and be counted. Yeah, I think those will be my remarks. I probably have another 5-7 minutes. So if there's a question for me, I'll take that. Otherwise, great. I'll have to miss, unfortunately, the next part of the session. And thank you again, Gurmeet and team, for having me.
Thank you, Vinod.
Sandeep ji, please unmute yourself.
I was saying I'm wishing if Vinod ji's flight get delayed, because today is the right day to to bear that loss.
Thank you. Thank you for all those wishes, Sandeep. Thanks.
Maybe I
Vinod,
think we can start.
can I ask a question here, Vinod?
सर को कहाँ हट गया सर अभी कैमरा ऑन है ये है तो Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. You may please go and ask the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
The participants can unmute themselves and ask the questions. Yes, Gautam.
Yeah. Hi. Can I ask a question right now? Gautam here from Electrons.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. So the question here is, we make current sensors, voltage sensors. So would we be eligible under the scheme?
Gautam, there is a category of electromechanical up there. You may just want to visit that. Sensors are included in that category.
Okay. So when will the numbers come out in terms of, because some of the numbers they're showing like 200 crores and all that seem to be very large. So do they have schemes for like people who like 25 crores in that range?
Depends upon the category, Gautam, that you would want to kind of investment upon. There are categories which have lower investment threshold. So let the guidelines come into picture, and then you'll have a better idea about each of the category, the products, and the investments.
Okay. When will we expect these guidelines to come out?
So it should have come out by now, but yes, probably another, because
26th
on 26th, I think Minister is releasing that.
26th it is expected.
Because 1st of May onwards the window gets open. So
The window will be started.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, myself Sharon. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm Sharon from Coimbatore. I have a question. We are a startup and we are in cybersecurity side. And if I want to start up, want to tie up with a foreign company, will I? My company would be eligible for any design related services?
So it looks to be difficult. Firstly, design related services do not really qualify under this. This is a manufacturing scheme per se. So
Okay.
Service provisions really do not factor in under this scheme.
Okay. This is especially for manufacturing only, right?
Yes.
Not design.
Not.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Rajiv this side from Protonics Fortuner.
Yes, Rajiv.
Yeah. So we are already established company in Noida, and we are thinking to expand our production line. So for that, we are planning to buy machinery, capital goods in the same infrastructure. So and the product would be related to solar energy, solar product, and it would be FG. So that would be a production line with machinery. So are we covering in the scheme?
Rajiv ji, I would find it difficult because one is that this is for components and not the finished goods per se.
Okay.
We'll have to wait and see whether the list has your category or not, which is difficult. Investment is not a condition to it. You can make the investment in existing facility by having plant machinery, etc., subject to you fulfilling the requisite investment thresholds and then the turnover threshold and employment.
Okay.
But yes, per se, the FG part looks to be difficult to have because this is mostly for electronic components only.
No, I'm talking about the fourth point in which there is a supply chain ecosystem and capital investment.
That is for capital investment for mostly the earlier capital ecosystem and electronic goods per se. So if you see,
so we are talking about components, not the FG.
No, it is capital goods which are for electronic manufacturing.
So we would be manufacturing solar inverters only.
So if those come into picture again, I would have to ask you to kind of wait and see how the guidelines per se, because there is no categorization what would qualify as capital equipment and how the categorization will unfold. So just wait, Rajiv, till the guidelines are issued. If that category is there, for sure, you will see the merits in this case.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And just to supplement what Kulraj said, I'm just so there is also a possibility that they will bring that there in the guidelines that there could be a governing council that would be set up for qualification of whatever would be qualified for the eligible category. So in case you have any queries, you can definitely give your product literature and you can mail it to them and they can just check and get back to you whether that would be eligible or not.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Any more questions?
Yeah, I'm Ravindra from Kirti Industries. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we are flex PCB manufacturers, but in the scheme, the flex PCB manufacturer minimum threshold value given as 1000 CR, which is very huge for the small players like us. Any possibility to reduce it, at least for 50 CR like that?
So, would you want to answer that? This is related to what you're saying.
So I think this question was actually raised by many players, but I think now that the cabinet approval is already received, I don't think there would be chances. But if you see the scheme, it also says that in case there would be any amendments that based on the recommendations that can also be provided. But that seems to be something that can be done later on once all the approvals are granted. But as of now,
See, in the scheme, multi-layer PCB is mentioned. So can we? There is no specification like whether it is a rigid or flex. So can we consider flex in that?
Yeah, exactly. That was my suggestion. So maybe on 26th, when the minister speaks about this, it would be a good time to have it clarified. But obviously, then they would be treated in the bare PCB area, but not the HDI or the flex PCB. Yeah, so you won't get the capex incentive, but I think the OPEX incentive should be available. But that's my personal take. We'll have to clarify to the ministry.
One important aspect of it is that there is a governing council that is nominated under the scheme. So if we have any clarifications on classification and stuff, which we believe that could come under in a different category, we will have that council to kind of address to us. So therefore, even if the guidelines come and if there is a belief that there could be more that is needed, then the council can provide requisite clarifications.
How to approach the council?
First you have to wait to see the guidelines, and then the next steps can be taken, sir.
Okay. When it will be released? Any idea?
We will contemplate 26th as the date. Let's wait.
26th, the minister is releasing as well as the portal also to apply.
Okay.
From 1st of May.
Okay, fine, sir. Thank you.
And I add for that Alcina is already represented to reduce the threshold limit for the multi-layer HDI and flex PCB. So let's hope government will take some decision.
Fine, sir. Fine.
Hi, this is Senthil from Haiku Electronics. I have a small question. In the hybrid incentive scheme, if you qualify for the, if you don't reach the turnover threshold, do you still get the capex incentive for the first year or the second year? If you invest the money but don't reach the turnover threshold, what happens in this situation?
So it's an interesting one. Again, I really don't have an answer because that is not there in the guidelines per se. But yes, if both the incentives are there, if you qualify for one, that should be granted. But again, wait for the guidelines to come, please.
Yeah, so I'm Pradeep. I'm from Micropack. Just adding on to a couple of questions what was asked earlier. I just wanted to, you have specified the additional incentive for boats more than 8 layers and something separate, different for whatever that is less than 6 layer. When this classification becomes, don't you think that it becomes a bit more complex, wherein you know how, because invoicing and the data how to claim process becomes much more complicated. That is one. The second one is since HDI and ML multi-layers are having two separate categories of incentive.
Don't worry, I'll give you the soft copy. No,
So since HDI and the multi-layer boards are having two different categories of incentives, and the both having the same HSN code, how do you really look at the complete the classification and the identification of which scheme that the whole thing will get qualified?
Pradeep, not sure that I've got a ready answer for that. I think it's fairly a complex task when you have a multi-layer PCB. How do we make a classification differentiation between the 6-layer and 8-layer? And I get that point. So again, I believe all those critical intricacies shall and we kind of look into that, get resolved by the detailed guidelines. And if not, then possibly a way to approach to the governing council to specifically ask that how will they judge on the basis of the invoicing is something that will be an important parameter. But again,
Okay,
wait for the guidelines. That detailing will be there for sure.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question in the chat box. We are manufacturers of LED lighting products. We are looking for exports. Any scheme which help us over the same? Is this the right platform? Yeah. So any scheme to help LED lighting products export?
Is there any impact on export of CCTV because of STQC? Am I audible? Hello?
You're audible, please go ahead.
Actually, I want to ask one thing. That is there any impact on the export of CCTV because of STQC compliances?
I may not be the right platform. We're talking about very specific scheme here.
Export of a CCTV.
The STQC one is only for the domestic PPO and domestic sales. It doesn't affect with your export.
Okay. Okay.